Welcome to Credit Connect's Connected News series. My name is Colin White and I'm the founder of Credit Connect's news site, which provides media content for the lending, credit and collections sector. In this second edition of Connected News, we're examining the technological innovations connected to customer engagement with a particular focus on the utility sector today. And we've got some experts from the consumer and commercial landscape of energy and water to help provide some insights for you. In addition to today's event, we'll also be looking at we will also reveal the top 20 companies in our annual Credit and Collections Technology Companies Power List. Before we begin this discussion, though, I'd like to make it clear that we like to make the event as interactive as possible. So if you'd all have a look at your screen, obviously you've got the video on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side of this display, you will see the Credit Connect logo. Here you have the tabs which you can display an overview of today's event. It's got resources as well where you can look at downloads. It's got some background to Aspect on there as well, who are today's sponsor. And it's got presenter speaker profiles as well. And obviously the most important part of that on there is Ask a Question. If you look at the Ask a Question tab, you can obviously pose questions to our panelists throughout. So have a look at that as well. And if we're unable to answer any of these questions during the discussions, we'll try and cover these in the write-up post-event. Also, in some cases, panelists might respond to you directly as well. So we'll come back to you on all of those aspects at the end. In addition, we'll be running some opinion polls throughout. So we'd like to do that with you as well. So we'll start that off now, if that's okay. And we wanted to find out, let me just get this up for you. How many people in your home or office are viewing this webinar? Hopefully you're all social distanced. So have a look at that poll for us. It says on your roll, 2 people, 3 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 or more. So I'll give you a brief moment to vote on that. That's brilliant. And while we're doing that and you're giving your responses, I'd like to introduce you to today's audience. Today's presenters, and they are Gary Moffat from Centrica. We've got Martin Kirby from Business Stream and Martin Alderson from Aspect Software. Good morning, guys. Hopefully you're all off mute now and you can say hello.
Good morning, guys.
Morning, everybody. Brilliant, excellent. So to set the agenda for today's discussion, I'll ask each our audience, each of the presenters to give a brief introduction to themselves and their background in the industry, and we'll go from there. So if you don't mind, it'd be great to hear from you first, Gary, if you could introduce yourself, please. Can you hear us, Gary? Maybe Martin Kirby, if you're not on mute, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Colin. Hi, everybody. Looking forward to today's session. I'm Martin Kirby. My role is Head of Credit Risk and Collections for Business Stream Scottish Water. We are typically a water provider in the B2B space. Some of our other brands you will know as Yorkshire Water or Southern Water as well. Based in Edinburgh, around 350 people, around 400,000 customers, trying to service in line with regulatory provision. Happy to sort of share some of those experiences today. Previously to Business Stream, I worked in construction for 3 years and then in recruitment for 5 years.
Excellent. Okay. And Martin Alderson, if you can hear us,
yes, I can.
For you to introduce yourself as well.
Hi, everybody. Martin Alderson, I'm the account director for Aspect Software. Been in the industry for over 20 years. I look after a small number of our enterprise accounts. And for those of you who don't know Aspect, just a quick overview. We've been providing contact center solutions to our customers for over 40 years now. Focus on customer service, workforce optimization, and of course, outbound contact. Through our heritage of some of the older members might know of Dave Ox and Melita. Main goal is to work with our customers to help them achieve their business goals. So that's us. Looking forward to today.
Excellent. And Gary, if we can hear from you as well, if you're Yeah, we can hear you now. Brilliant. Not last but least, and you can tell us about your technology awards later. Gary, no, brilliant. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, morning everyone. I'm Gary Moffat. I'm currently the contact strategy manager for collections with British Gas, who are part of the Centrica group. I've been with Centrica about 17 years, most of my working life, but I've worked specifically in the debt and collections world for about 7 years now, leading strategy and operational functions, but also always with a focus on customer contact, really, and customer engagement, and in particular over the last few years, transformation of our debt strategy. So yeah, in terms of understanding the collections landscape and hopefully, you know, getting some additional knowledge from this wider audience and group today, you know, that would be fantastic.
Brilliant, excellent, thanks, Gary. Right, so we're obviously today's session we're going to talk about customer engagement in technology, but it'd be good to get a starting point for everybody here, first of all, and just hear first of all from everybody how. The pandemic to this point has really affected us. Obviously, we're in and out of lockdown at this stage, and we're going to find out some exciting news for all of us today, depending on where you live, as to what tier we're all going to be in. No judgment on anybody on that one. But it'd be good to hear, first of all, a bit of background. Martin Kirby kicking us off to kind of hear how the pandemic has affected you and your organisation and your collections teams, I guess. That would be a good starting point.
Thanks, Colin. I broke this down into two segments, really. How it affected the team, and then really trying to pick that up with what things that we saw in the organisation, what changes did we have to make. I think for the team, there was small impact in the few weeks while we got up to speed with the technology. We did a phased work from home approach, trying to get all the teams through. One of our biggest issues were not all of our people were issued with company equipment, so we're only around 60%. That caused issues in the various VPN lakes that used to connect to our piece. Once those issues were done, then the performance started to improve, and in fact, actually from month 2, which would be May, in my opinion, I'm sort of calling April month 1, we really started to see the performance increase. After May, June, July, and August, we've really outperformed any previous past month at all, and we're measuring that performance by customer conversations, driving obviously cash through the door, the number of calls that we're making. Our digital strategy has certainly helped, and our Genesis dialer has been really the glue to make all that happen. Without that, one wonders what we would have done or we would have been able to do so quickly. You know, prior to COVID, from the team perspective, you would expect an agent to do 45 to 50 calls a day. We sort of saw that with the technology hitting 80 customer conversations a day, and these are real conversations. We also noted really early, that sort of comes into when you're doing your role play, where it come in early, we noticed very little sickness in the early months. And obviously that really started to affect our production algorithms as they started to come through. That's changed really in the last 2 months. We started to see fatigue creeping in, and we started to see some mental health kicking in. I think for most part, teams have been very, very responsible. They've all attended the daily stand-ups. We are a lean organization, and we perform, so daily huddles we're used to. So seeing that happen every day and on time, and I've never seen such really strong attendance and governance has been really a massive glue here. We had some resignations in the last few weeks. That's the first resignations we've seen this year, as people started to search the job market and find different roles. Our engagement score for our teams has really never been higher. So we seem to have got that resilience together. The camaraderie came back. So that's that on the team. From a company's perspective, Utilities and water utilities, which is our service provision, has been really affected considerably. From the outset, if you review your processes, we send over 600,000 plus letters a year, and that had to be stopped, and that had to be rewritten, and then we had to add various regulatory words into that. So it's been quite a task to update that letter suite. For protection as well, we work with third parties. We returned all our third party debtors back, so we called back our DCA stock. We just felt in a better place if we closed it out with the third parties and brought it back to the team. We're really keen about the brand, and we're really keen about the situation. We really wanted to control that. We retrained all our teams as well to be more empathetic and remove any of the phrases that would imply we wanted to take further action. It was really more consideration around that engagement conversation, trying to understand from the customer, how are you today? How's your business doing? And trying to really start to paint that picture. All our disconnections were stopped. We weren't allowed to do that. And then actually has brought into consideration as well the overall way disconnections works going forward. There's still some work to do on that. All our legal cases were altered with the judicial services as well, as they came to a halt as well. And we created internally a specific team that dealt with all of our vulnerable customers and automatically offered payment deferrals and got customers to sign into payment deferral schemes. And we adjusted our systems for them to easily do that as well. And that started to work. We stayed very, very close to the regulation and really, really followed it in detail. We felt we needed to do that. And some of our customers that needed refunding in this process, because obviously they were closed, they were no longer using supply or waste, so we started to refund those. Generally, the overall performance of the organisation as an organisation was more or less in line with plan. And we also continued amazingly through all this process to get on to continue our billing transformation journey as we start to change through our billing software. Undertaking a transformation program, a software transformation program remotely has not been without challenges. If people didn't understand what Sprint, Agile, Kanban, Milo were before, they certainly are really well used to using all those tools as well. So that's more or less us. Good business performance, good internal team performance, a little bit of fatigue in the last few months with the guys, so I had to support that. But generally, I think the camaraderie, the resilience will just bear us out for the future. And even when we went through, we didn't really see any difference in lockdown 2.0. It seemed to be just carrying on as the norm. So more or less, I think that's where Business Stream is.
No, that's good. It's really interesting. And like you say, I think we're all adopting and we'll almost see a light at the end of the tunnel now. So hopefully that's providing some more upbeat kind of team camaraderie as well. Gary, it'd be great to hear your view as well.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay still?
Yeah. Brilliant.
Right? Yeah. Good. I mean, just building on what Martin said. So obviously, I'm sure everybody has experienced quite significant impacts, across the various organisations that they work for. Obviously, an organisation the size of British Gas, there's been mass impacts. I remember that starting on Friday the 13th of March. That seemed to be the day that things started to take a bit of a turn. That was the day that we decided to move all of our back office staff to work from home. And then obviously guidance followed quite quickly after, which meant that a mass migration of our office staff, from offices to home had to take place. I think just focusing on the collections aspect of it, I think some of the real challenges, were that we had to shut down, large chunks of our operational activities, almost immediately in March. Particularly a lot of our late stage collections processes were impacted. So and obviously continue still to be with the rolling lockdowns, that are happening across the country. But things in particular like field visits, debt collection activity, warrants planning, meter exchanges, smart metering installs, all these types of things that we use as tools to support customers to get out of debt. We almost had to shut that down, almost immediately. And I think Martin touched on this a little bit, but I think one of the biggest changes that I've seen across the year, and something that's really come into focus, is that despite the fact that we had quite significant transformation plans in flight across the business, those transformation plans almost immediately started to become refocused on COVID and the impacts of COVID and what the sort of new normal, I absolutely hate that phrase, but what the new normal might look like. It's specifically led to some alternative thinking around about even the payment types that we offer our customers, the types of propositions and resolution types that we might put forward to our customers when it comes to debt and collections, and thinking about it, as well, how we start to manage or help customers to manage their finances in different ways. I think something that's really come out of this, and one of the big changes for my team, is that we've moved much closer, I think, to the charity partners and the types of approach that some of the not-for-profit organisations take to help customers to get out of debt. I think the working relationships between those types of organisations have become closer, and I think Martin actually mentioned the word empathy, which I think is really front and centre now. That's become a big aspect of how we think about our collections strategies. So the pandemic's had a fundamental impact on our plans and our day-to-day activities, but also on our future strategy planning. How we think about our, serving our customers in future, our products, our propositions, even our customer onboarding process, a leave journey, how we manage final debt with customers, who change supplier, all those types of things. And of course, digital and self-serve adoption is obviously become a significant part of that.
No, great, really interesting, and kind of interesting here. It's not a massive contrast between yourself and Martin, but interesting. We've also got on, obviously keen to get the view of Martin Alderson, obviously a different take as a kind of supplier into the market, but anecdotally, I guess you've got some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I do. I mean, as you say, some of it from a supplier, but how that's impacted our customers.
Yeah.
The key message that came out, our CEO got on and just said, first of all, look after yourselves, make sure you're okay, and then secondly, look after our customers. And they were the two key messages, and a lot filtered down from that. Aspect generally was working from home in a lot of areas, but the focus we had in the early days, and actually before lockdown, was we ran a full business continuity test against our Aspect Customer Care, which is our support organisation globally. And really, that was going to be key, because we knew that we were going to get different questions coming in, different challenges with customers having to move to work from home. And the good thing is that worked, and no customer noticed that everybody was working at home. So that was one of the key things we did. And then we ran a series of seminars for our customers about the things to think about as you move, the technology things you need to think about in moving from work from home. And then it was all hands to the pump in helping our customers do that. Interesting enough that the elements that we own in terms of Aspect was relatively easy to do. The challenges that we saw were getting laptops for customers who didn't have laptops and only had desktops, and there was massive demand for laptops. I'm sure everybody knows that. And their security. How do you manage security when you've got people working from home? So I think they were the key things that we've done. In terms of the Aspect itself, as I said, generally a remote organisation. So we are having a lot of business discussions. There's been a lot of activity, and it's been just helping our customers, because we know that if you help them during the COVID period, they'll support you post-COVID. So that's been the approach. I think you're on mute.
That's great. Sorry about that. Yeah. No, that's great. And I think I was going to ask you all how your working patterns have changed, but I think that's kind of covered up in some of the things you've all mentioned there. And we've just put out a poll just, we just asked people whether they're still working from home now, back in the office a little while ago. So, thanks for everybody's feedback on that. I think we're going to move to the next thing and really ask, and starting with Gary on this one, if that's okay, how customer engagement has altered in your company in terms of contacting customers. I guess there might be a pattern of between the different lockdowns or when we weren't in lockdown. So Gary, if you could give us any thoughts on how Centrica have approached that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of how customer engagement has changed or altered since lockdown, I think Martin Kirby talked a bit about obviously the immediate impacts of the pandemic. I think for everybody, it probably started to manifest itself incredibly quickly, around about March and April time. In the first 2 weeks after lockdown, like I said before, we had to shut down, quite significant chunks of our customer-facing businesses. Mm-hmm. Sometimes entire operations, things like, for example, our home move teams, it's quite a significant operation in itself, mm-hmm. supporting customers to move house, but we effectively had to close that down entirely. Mm-hmm. What it really meant was that we only had about 1 in 3 of our frontline staff in the UK who were actually able to work in that first couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. We are an organisation who uses a huge offshore capacity to support operations and frontline interactions with customers. We lost almost all of that offshore capacity, which was about a third of our customer-facing staff. Wow! And so subsequently, on our phones, on the chat channels, we were only serving somewhere around about a third of the volume we would normally serve in a day. For an organisation like British Gas, that meant that there was around about 300,000 customers every week who were trying to get in touch with us that couldn't. And so that obviously, was quite significant. You had the spike in call volumes, but also that drop off in resource. Mm-hmm. I'd say from an engagement point of view and how it's altered, 2 things have probably really struck me as we've gone through this. First of all, we're a business that takes a huge amount of telephony contact, and that still continues today. But one of the shifts that has happened, I think out of circumstance more than anything else, but I think it's something that now is continued as things have started to settle down in the pandemic, is that we've made a huge shift away from the traditional web chat, if you like, the sort of instant chat forums, and more towards async messaging, two-way SMS, WhatsApp, these types of channels. It was actually born out of the fact that in our offshore operations, where we manage a lot of web chat activity, we had quite an issue with broadband infrastructure in the early parts of the pandemic. And it was difficult to handle, multiple chats at the one time. So we started to steer customers towards the more sort of async, not instantaneous messaging, where we could, host conversations, particularly on the app, which was somewhere where we already had that functionality. And that has continued, to see, a rise in usage, through the back end of the pandemic, and even today in collections, we're now starting to look at how we might use some of that async type messaging to actually deal with more complex, queries in debt. Mm-hmm. So I think that's been a big shift. That's been a big shift for us, and I think we'll learn some real lessons from, what customers want on that front. It's received, I think, a really good response from our customer base. And the second thing I was going to mention, again from a collections point of view, is that we actually saw quite a lot of customers get in touch with us in the early months of the pandemic who we hadn't interacted with in quite some time. And those customers, were sometimes purely getting in touch to tell us that they were worried about the impacts of COVID. Mm-hmm. It might not necessarily have been that they had a particular service need at that time, or they were in debt, But I think what it allowed us to do was to create, more engagement with that customer group. It created an opportunity, to do things like broader data capture on those customers, to talk to them about their preferences, to talk to them even about the current plans that they were on, and just engage them a bit more in terms of what their options were. So I think it was interesting to see, that there was actually proactive engagement from customers who didn't necessarily have an issue to resolve. And I think what we've started to think about quite quickly was, how do you use that customer engagement to maybe think about how you might support those customers better in future?
No, it's great, really interesting. Yeah. And Martin, Kirby, it'd be great to hear your views on that and how customer engagement has altered your company.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think as well, after the tsunami of people cancelling the DDs to get in control because they wasn't really sure what the future was, which was a bit of a testing time for any organisation that uses automatic payment methods, for sure. A bit of a worrying time, but once we got through that, when we actually looked at the detail of that, some of those people didn't owe us any money anyway, and they were just doing it as a control mechanism. So we got through that. I think for me, the key thing here was to really get to the customer conversation, really speak to the customer and work with the customer. I think this is, we really want to get behind the brand and really be, the place to go to in the difficult times. We want to work with these guys, put them on deferrals or do whatever schemes available to them and work with them. And I think if you can work with your customers, then they will stay with you or they will come back. And I think it's a massive opportunity to really deliver brand loyalty. We refocused. We always are focused on Trustpilot anyway, but we refocused our eyes on that as well. We really did start to get into that empathetic mode, starting to listen, starting to make sure that we got them on the correct work streams. But again, back to me is, I want our customers to know that we work through with them on this, and that, if this happens again, that we're going to be there for them. I want them to be, we want to be the water retailer of default for them. And we want to, I was on call with a massive retail chain yesterday that will go into CVA, but we want to work with them through that CVA piece as well. So, it's really both ends of the spectrum for me. So, definitely more than empathetic. Definitely the time to really know your customer and really believe in your customer and really work with your customer for me. And we showed that in spades in Business Stream, really got behind our customer and said, we're here to work you through, for sure.
Right. Yeah, no, it sounds really interesting. It's interesting that parallels, albeit obviously slightly different businesses that you've got, really interesting. And I guess, Martin Alderson, I guess from your client's perspective, you maybe have some anecdotal stories here about their engagement experience.
Absolutely. It sort of aligns with what both Gary and Martin have said. Some of our customers seen a big increase in voice calls, inbound voice calls.
Yeah.
Along the lines of either, look, I think there may be a problem here, and actually we saw a 10%. We do a customer index every review every year, and we saw a 10% uplift in voice calls and people wanting to use the voice channel versus what's been a declining one over the last few years. And we think that is around what Martin talked about, the urge to talk, the urge to be, have some empathy, and that we're all in this together, rather than, it's not a individual challenge that person has, although it is an individual one, but everybody knows why they have that challenge with the pandemic. So we've seen a lot of that with our customers. So very, very much in line with what the guys have said. Just reiterate, we've seen that across all our customer base.
And I guess as well, I'll start with you as well on this, Martin Alderson, that the adoption or digital adoption in relation to customer engagement, has that changed as well? To what extent?
That's an interesting one, because I think we're, as the guys are saying, that digital adoption's been sort of changing over time. I think we've seen probably, I think it was Martin Kirby who was saying that we've seen in the first 3 months, it was all about, how do we get people working from home? And that was the focus.
Mm-hmm.
And then probably the next phase we've seen is people saying, okay, how do I manage these people now they're working from home rather than in a contact center, which is the traditional way, and a recognition that this isn't just going to be a short-term thing. It's not going to be 3 months and then it's back to normal. Yeah. It's going to be either a hybrid model where you have some days working home, some in the office, etc., or some customers who are thinking about going full working from home. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the phases that we're seeing. Mm-hmm. And then we absolutely are seeing digital adoption, but interestingly, I'm not sure yet if that is a COVID thing or just a general industry dynamic. Yeah. But we are seeing customers, just to give an anecdotal one, it's similar lines to I think the other guys have been saying, where they're looking to use asynchronous, in this instance SMS, to make appointments with customers, make sure that's got two-way SMS, so it's an interactive natural language type discussion. And then obviously once they've got that appointment made, feed that into the dialer and have the right agent to deliver that call at the right time for the customer. So that's the sort of thing that we've seen. But we've been seeing that before COVID, not necessarily just a COVID sort of reaction.
Okay, yeah. And Gary, have you adopted some of your digital customer engagement strategies as well?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely been an acceleration of our digital transformation plans this year. I think for me, I think in terms of the broader business, the broader customer services business, I think there's definitely an opportunity that's sort of come up this year to think about how we better triage customers who want to converse with us in some way. We do a lot of things on the IVR, which I think are quite smart in terms of segmenting customers and pointing them to the right place. We give customers the option to select discussion topics and certain categories on web chat channels. Mm-hmm. But I think something that we have been focusing on in the collections and debt world over the last 18 months is, we know that collections conversations, can be quite difficult. They can be quite awkward. There's often discussion about, personal circumstances, very much so, and certainly for more people, this year because of the COVID situation. And one of the things we've been focusing on doing is, how do we give customers a sort of safe and discreet environment to tell us a bit about their circumstances before they actually have to enter into a conversation, on a certain channel about it. We were already working on improving that self-serve capability, if you like, but it's absolutely now become a central component of the thinking this year. So I think you've got the sort of balance of, the service level necessity that was created by COVID initially, but also, there's also been some benefits in terms of actually accelerating that digital adoption, because I think what I've found, certainly in an organisation our size, is that there's been a bit of a loosening of the red tape. Swifter approvals are happening internally. Budgets, have been redirected a little bit at looking at, how do we communicate and engage with customers in different ways. And I think choice is something that's really important as well. That's something that I think, if you can provide it for a customer, I think really puts control back in their hands, especially in a sensitive collections environment. And what we've been doing through our triaging of customers, and by the way, that is proactively through SMS and email, giving customers a prompt to allow them to tell us a bit about their circumstances. What we've also been doing is giving them the choice on which channel they want to complete that interaction on. Do you want to have a two-way SMS conversation? Would you prefer it if we called you? Do you want to go and have an instant chat with us online? So I think choice is something that's really important as well. And our customers have responded really well to having the choice on which channel to have a conversation with us, especially when there is a bit of reluctance from that customer to get in touch because their circumstances have changed, because they're experiencing financial difficulty. I think that empathetic approach of reaching out and saying, we're here to help you, but how do you want us to help you? And on what channel do you want us to help you on? I think has had a huge impact.
Okay. Yeah, no, good. And Martin, Kirby, any thoughts on customer engagement, like the technology has impacted the digital adoption of customer engagement for you?
Yeah, I think really it's been our saviour. It really has. I mean, we were on the cusp of doing quite a lot of this in January, February, and more or less had got it enabled ready in March. We've noticed a huge amount of customers reacting to that as well, especially when you look at the personalized voice drops really drive good conversations back in where we need those conversations to be, or drive payments back in, which means that we don't really need to touch them. Our two-way text process has been really good. I mean, we're seeing 34 to 40% of customers reacting to that really well, and being able to A, access automatically the information, and then B, access us automatically, really starting to make sure that we're on top of the blended approach. So the digital part for me has really started to work. I wish we'd have had more time to do more digital, but we have to draw a line in March and say we've got what we've got. We've just got to really sort of sweat that asset through now and sweat that through the next periods. What's really interesting for me is to really try and take the digital to the next stage. Once we find our way through this, is how can we take that digital platform and what really does that look like going forward? And when you see some I see some initial videos from organizations that are in this space where they have where they have, if you like, automation or driving the collector. So, virtual agents are actually prompting the collector as opposed to doing the engagement piece. So I think the digital space here has got so much more to do. And I think, we'll talk about open banking later. And I believe that is going to really be a massive conduit to more digital, especially on the lower volume. Customers just want to be able to hit the button and pay, and feel that that's been dealt with. And I think we're starting to see that come through.
Yeah. Okay. And on that note as well, I guess it'd be good to know what kind of digital engagement have you found has generated the best results? Is there any kind of things that you can reveal to our audience about that?
For me, I think to me the two-way text is probably the best one.
Wow.
This drove hi, how are you today? 2, what would you like us to do? 3, can I have an invoice for? And that automatic, can I pay? Yes, you can. Can I call you? Yes, you can. So that automatic two-way has worked really well. And I say driving 40% of the people that are receiving that. So being really responsible about that, not blasting it like maybe you would have done before, but really being responsible about positioning that. So that's really good for us. But we have so many people thank us for the reminder, thank us for the voice, the personalized voice message when we can't get through to them. And I think that's probably a close second to me. Email, we've seen less of, and obviously voice comes behind all of that. So that's more or less in that order where we see that.
Yeah, we've just put that poll out to our audience as well, so they're just going to have a look at that while we're talking as well. And Gary, I guess it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on this as well, and see what kind of technology and engagement has worked best for you, or you've seen a pattern or trend emerge at all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting listening to what Martin had to say. I think it's not. I don't think it's an easy question to answer sometimes, because I think the two ways I look at it is customers. There's one aspect of the channel that customers want to interact with you on, and then there's a second aspect of, well, where do you get the best outcomes? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of this is to do with the makeup of your customer base as well. We have quite a large sort of legacy cash check customer base at British Gas. Traditional telephony users, I think make up quite a large part of our portfolio. But I think what we have seen certainly in debt and collections is that if you give customers a choice in terms of how they want to interact with you, I absolutely agree with Martin. I think, quite a lot of customers want to interact, on digital means. So we've seen actually around anywhere between 60 to 70% of our customers opt to have a two-way SMS conversation with us rather than have a telephone conversation. However, I think there's also the aspect around there's variable results on when you then start that interaction, what is the success of those contact channels in getting the customer to an outcome and resolving, their debt situation, for example. I think delivering a one and done outcome, if you like, tends to have more success on the phone. So less customers might want to interact with us by phone, and less customers might respond, when we try to call them. But when we do get them engaged in a conversation, we do see still, improved outcome rates over 7 days. However, I think the one thing to sort of say about that is I think there's a number of reasons for it. I think we probably still haven't quite got, a handle on how to have the right conversation on a two-way SMS or an async messaging platform, particularly about things like debt and collections. It's a complex conversation, lots of compliance and regulatory aspects in there. Difficult to find that balance between, a genuine human interaction and, compliance and ticking all the right boxes. So I think a lot of that is in training and understanding how we cut to the needs of a customer, a lot quicker. But what we are working on is some test propositions that will actually give the customer the opportunity to choose what they want in terms of payment options on an end-to-end self-serve journey.
Brilliant.
And instead of disengaging them with a lot of compliance and regulatory chat, looking at how we increase monitoring once they've selected that payment option. So actually giving them the choice to do things digitally end to end. And then instead of sort of, doing all the compliance stuff up front, thinking about, well, how do you help and monitor those customers and make sure you're supporting them in the right way, make sure the plan they're on is the right thing for them. And a lot of that is about digital adoption as well. So Martin mentioned open banking, which I'm sure we'll touch on, and solutions like request to pay, things like that. I think these will be a big part of how we give customers, the option to self-serve, more comprehensively moving forward. So yeah, I think there's still lots coming up, in the near future in terms of technological developments that will help with that.
Yeah, of course. And I think on that note, you mentioned compliance there. You seeing that as a big barrier as well in terms of enabling smooth collections processes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely in terms of collections processes in the utilities world, obviously we have Ofgem, who are particularly close to what we do from a collections point of view in the energy world. So affordability and assessing a customer's ability to pay is huge. It's actually going to become part of license conditions in December for the big energy companies. Huge change for the industry. And it means that, there has to be more focus on, are we asking the right questions at the right time in the right way to make sure that we get customers on plans that are suitable for them. That is a real challenge through digital contact. And I think that we need to find better ways to do those things without making it sound like a rigid checklist, of questions, because that very, very quickly, I think, turns customers off. And so I think it's important to think about how things like affordability and vulnerability are assessed, on digital channels. And like I said, we've started the journey to do that. I think a lot of it is in giving the customer the opportunity to tell them or tell you about their circumstances, in a discreet way. So we're working towards that, but be interesting as well, to hear from the rest of the panel about that, and also, any sort of insights the audience might have. The other thing that I just wanted to mention quickly as well is that, payments, in terms of regulation when it comes to payments, 3D Secure is a big change that's coming into e-commerce payments in 2021. and that's going to create, more barriers for customers to pay, two-factor authentication.
Yeah.
So I think a big thing that we're looking at, for next year is making sure that we don't create barriers for our customers to make payments. I think digital wallets, is the way forward, with that, using Apple Pay, Google Pay, Amazon Pay, these types of platforms. It's about integrating that into our systems. We've got big legacy CRM systems. We do it well on things like our app, but I think it's about opening up all of our payment channels to things like digital wallets. That's going to be a real focus for us.
And Martin, Kirby, I'd be good to hear you from the water view on this as well, and involving compliance, and obviously the changes that are going on with what you mentioned about open banking. We're good to cover that because we're rushing through on time here, but it'd be good to hear your views on that as well. Bit of a big question there, but it'd be good to.
Yeah, so for me, compliance is just a must. I mean, it's there to protect the customer, and there to protect the industry, and we just have to comply. It certainly provides us with challenges. I mean, like breathing space, which is just on everybody's words. Have you collected the VAT number? Can you really say if the VAT registered or not? And all that sort of work that's going in the background there for that to kick off mid-year next year. So for me, we just have to adopt that and work that through. And I think it's really true that we've got to be in a better position to really look at the vulnerable customer and take that detail through. I think the open banking infrastructure will start to work in that, and you're seeing some of the debts. See some of the debt agencies already working with the right organisations to try and provide that information. I really think open banking, digital wallets, are the way forward. I see request to pay as being a phenomenal two-way communication. The ability for my agent to be on the phone and send a link, and for that customer then to respond to that link while they're on the phone and call that deal done, has got to be the way we have to go. Whether or not we send that over the internet, whether or not we send that via text, I'm agnostic to. All I really want the customer to do is receive it. Have you received it? Do you want to pay me? And then send me that message back, or do that payment, and make that really seamless. And that's really well advanced. There are some utilities organisations already have that in plan. Some of the major banks already have that in plan. I think we talked about legacy systems will take a while to get that through. I think that's really important, because it's not just about taking the money or the payment. That is key, obviously, but then what do we do with that data when it comes back through? We need to make sure that that's accounted for correctly, quickly. So, because there's so many things that generate off the back of that. If I had a crystal ball, and a few people have asked me, I honestly think things like initiate to pay and request to pay will start to take a hold in traditional areas like direct debit, for sure. People want, and you saw this at the beginning of the pandemic, people want to be in control of their finances. They cancel their DDs just as a natural default action. This gives them that tool without doing all of that, and I see that being really strong as we drive through next year.
Yeah, no, it's massive. It's massive, and I mean, is it touching on the consumer side, Gary? Any thoughts on that in terms of the things that are coming up in terms of innovation and request to pay? How do you think that will kind of affect some of your collections processes? And obviously, there's a compliance barrier as well.
Yeah, I think it will help. I think it will help massively. I think one of the things that certainly impacts us on our residential portfolio is that we still have this quite large legacy of cash check customers, quarterly, monthly cash check customers. I think the business, the business direction, and a lot, the business direction, I think, of a lot of organisations is to try and to get customers to sign up to paperless billing, to online account management. But we still have quite a core of customers who they don't necessarily want an online account. They don't necessarily want a direct debit. They just want an easy way to pay their bills, at a frequency that suits them as well. I think that's something else that request to pay will really help with, is that, at the moment, because, we are an organisation who works on SAP, it is relatively rigid in some areas in terms of what we can offer and what we can change. What things like request to pay will do is give customers, the option to pay at different frequencies. They can pay off certain aspects of an outstanding balance or outstanding bill, periodically at times that suit them before the due date. So you can start to almost manage your own payment terms, your own payment schedule, if you like, and that's something that will really take, I think, a lot of weight off some of the big legacy systems, certainly in large organisations and corporates. So yeah, I think it will make a huge difference. I think the key is making sure you can ingest information from those things. I know that request to pay will allow you to have direct dialogue with customers as well, about a bill or a balance. I think it remains to be seen how we integrate that and use it in conjunction with CRM systems and customer management systems that are already in situ. But I absolutely, I think it's a huge opportunity, particularly, for customers who are less, inclined to manage online accounts and to set up direct debits.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think it's really interesting to hear this how we think we're on one step and we think that COVID's really accelerated the technological change, but almost the regulation and the advancements around request to pay and open banking, things like that, really accelerating it even faster forward than we can ever imagine into next year without all the other economic pressures that are going to affect us. So really interested on that. We're actually getting close to time, guys. So we have had a couple of questions come in, which one of them was just a bit out of kilt with what we thought would be relevant. It was just to see if any of you guys use rich messaging. So I think we might cover that off in our event roundup. I was going to ask you kind of what you see now with all the technological innovations and the potential recession. What will be the next biggest challenges? I guess starting with you, Gary, really quickly on that, to get your thoughts on that as well.
I think the next biggest challenges really from a collections, and debt point of view, is that I think more and more customers, now are experiencing even short-term problem debt. We do a lot of work with step change, and I'm quoting figures here that I'm not entirely. Don't hold me to this, but step change have said that somewhere around about 15 million customers have been adversely affected, since the pandemic started. In some way, shape or form, from a financial point of view, they've had a financial change, whether it be being furloughed, whether it be redundancy, whether it be having to take unpaid leave. 15 million customers, and the 2.5 million of those customers, potentially are facing a financial crisis. I don't think that yet has fully manifested itself. Certainly from what we've seen on our portfolio, I think there is probably still a bubble and a spike of that to come. So I think early engagement with those customers is a real challenge, and digital, will have to play, a significant part in that, because, organisations, I just don't think will have the resource or the manpower, to do that in traditional ways. So I think all the things we've touched on today. I think early communication, not just when a bill becomes overdue, but when a change in circumstance happens, between the bill date and the due date, are we, understanding what the challenges are our customers are facing? How do we do that with digital communications? And how do we, very, very quickly try and find the right solution for a customer? I think now more than ever, I always talk to our directors about, once an outstanding balance goes past, 30 days, the deterioration and the chance of collecting that, just ramps up significantly. It almost evaporates. And I think that, getting to customers early, showing that there are options, and doing that through, multiple channels, I think is going to be a real challenge for us next year. I think we're well set up to do it, but actually I think some of the things that are happening from a technological advancement point of view, like request to pay, I think these types of things will help with that as well.
And Martin Alderson as well, really quickly on that, what do you see kind of as the challenges from your perspective? You're on mute in a minute, by the way. If you can see.
Yes, sorry. Just coming off mute. Yeah, very similar to what we've heard. In terms of the technologies that we see, it is about trying to use technology to anticipate the needs. And Gary touched on that before. So rather than just waiting for things to happen, to anticipate the needs of the customer. And we're looking with our customers are using digital channels to deliver that. So, and then once you do, when you engage with the customer, I think both Martin and Gary have spoken about this, make it a two-way conversation and make it as natural as possible. And the more technology that is changing very quickly in terms of natural language recognition and all of those things. We've got Microsoft Lewis and Google Dialogic, and all of those things can actually make a real difference. And then make it relevant and timely, those messages, yeah? So it's back to not just blasting, but really trying to focus on what's relevant, what's timely, and use the technology. So we're seeing that in terms of the actual end channel, as has been said, is around choice. You've got to move up one and get those things right. And then the channel is, okay, you can then offer that through SMS, through WhatsApp, through other channels, but get that bit right first.
Yeah, and really quickly, Martin, Kirby, if you could just give us a 1 minute on that as well. Your thoughts on the collection future. Sorry, you're mute as well. But yeah,
no,
just really quickly on that, because I've got to announce the company shortlist as well. So yeah, your view on the future in a minute, if that's possible.
Yeah, thanks for that. For me, a repeat of what the others have said, really more digital, really get close to the partners that can provide that, and really start to tailor that digital as rather than a standard thing, more tailor that for your business. But don't lose sight of the customer. We really need the customer at this time, really need to understand them, and then really need them for the future. So try and make sure that journey aligns as well. And I agree, not so much blasting, more tailored, controlled messaging to the right groups, and really start to understand that segmentation, which was an earlier question.
Brilliant. There's so much we could have got through, and I'm so sorry it was taking all. We've really sailed through some of the questions we wanted to cover in some of the areas, but it just goes to show there's so much to kind of discuss moving forward. We're just going to move quickly on, because we said we'd share the announcement on the who was our top 20 companies this year. I was going to list them off. We've got Air, Ariza. So all these companies are a result of we run the Credit and Collections Technology Awards. We rounded up the winners and the finalists over the last 4 years, and we've created like a point system. And off the back of that, all of these companies have made the list. You can see them in front of you here. Rushing through it, I would have happily gone through this in more detail, but you can find out more about that in our resources tab on this page as well. And that really covers some of the detail around that. But we're going to cover a news story on that. We'll definitely do a news story roundup of this as well. This was a really good conversation. Some of the questions we didn't cover off, I'd like to kind of cover in a like a review online, so we'll do that as well. But what we're doing now, we're round up, and I'd like to thank all of the guys for their time this morning. It's obviously time is even more precious as we're all trying to work up to Christmas and get everything done as much as we can, and then work out what we can and can't do. So we'll find out about that today. But I'd like to end, of course, by thanking Martin Alderson of Aspect, Martin Kirby from Business Stream, and Gary Moffat, of course, from British Gas, and really thank them for the time. It'd be really interesting to see people's views on this as well. If anybody's got any thoughts, make contact with Credit Connect. We're really interested to get your views. If you want to join a future discussion on this, that would be great. And round up, we've got some more content coming up over the next month or so. We've got an event covering mobile technology on the Tuesday the 15th of December as well, and we've got more events planned for next year as well, and we're promised to probably make these sessions a bit longer just so we don't rush through in the future. But I'd like to end by thanking Martin Alderson, Martin Kirby. We didn't get mixed up with their names, so I'm grateful for that. And of course, Gary Moffat for their time today. And we'll round up and say thanks a lot, everybody. Take care and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.